It was the verdict that froze the whole nation in shock. From this moment on, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are stripped of every royal honour, privilege and title. Gone, just like that. With only 25 cutting words, King Charles III dropped a decree so explosive it shattered royal tradition and shook the British monarchy to its core. The world instantly split in two. Some called it justice, others called it revenge. But one thing was clear, this wasn't a quiet step back. This was a royal operation, cold, calculated and without mercy. And the biggest casualties? None other than Britain's once golden couple. Could this really be the end of Harry and Meghan, or are they gearing up for a counterattack that'll flip the palace upside down? Stay locked in to uncover why William's chilling silence became his strongest weapon and how Catherine quietly claimed the true heart of the monarchy. You're watching Windsor Today, where the curtain finally lifts and the truth behind those palace walls bursts into the open. At the centre of it all burned a fury the public had never seen from King Charles. Insiders had whispered for months that he was growing tired of what they called the Sussex circus. But no one, not even his closest aides, imagined he'd take it this far, or speak this sharply on live TV. His message, aired across the UK and Commonwealth, was nothing short of thunder. Charles didn't sound like a grieving father. He sounded like a ruler laying down law. His tone was crisp, cold, and laced with anger. He accused Meghan of systematic manipulation, saying she treated Harry like a walking handbag of royal privilege, using his birthright to chase Hollywood fame. The king's words hit hard. He called her actions a stain upon the dignity of the monarchy. The phrase was so fierce that royal historians immediately began comparing it to the most severe language ever recorded in modern crown history. Once, this kind of royal punishment was reserved for Edward VIII. Now it's Harry's turn under the royal hammer. No soft words, no hidden meanings, no gentle fatherly tone this time. King Charles made it painfully clear. His younger son had become reckless, easily swayed, and blind to the people using him. He called Harry a man who traded gratitude for spectacle and family for attention. Every word landed like a royal thunderclap. Behind the king's tight composure was a message that couldn't be missed. The tension had been simmering for years, but insiders say the breaking point came at a glittering Hollywood bash, Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party. The room was dripping in money, fame, and power. Exactly the kind of world Meghan had been chasing long before she met Harry. The guest list read like a billionaire's fantasy. Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sanchez, Silicon Valley moguls, top-tier actors, and media giants. Palace insiders say Meghan had always dreamed of being in that circle. But what went down next lit the fuse on King Charles's fury. Multiple guests claimed Meghan demanded that any unedited photos of her and Harry be deleted from social media, insisting she had release forms and contractual rights. Party staff, caught off guard, said no such thing existed. The room turned awkward fast. Hollywood laughed, but the palace didn't. The fallout was brutal. A former duchess, barely invited, trying to control photos like she still held royal authority. The tabloids went wild and diplomatic circles buzzed. For King Charles, who had spent years reshaping the monarchy's image and protecting its honour, this was public humiliation on a global scale. He reportedly saw it as the final proof. Meghan never truly respected the institution she married into. But the real heartbreak came next, and it didn't come from Meghan. It came from Harry himself. While William was across the world representing the crown at a major climate summit in Brazil, Harry suddenly appeared in Canada, without notice, without protocol, and without royal approval. When Harry was questioned about his sudden Canada trip, he swore he had cleared everything with the palace. But when officials checked the records, nothing. No email, no briefing, no message, not even a single line in the king's official travel log. This wasn't just some small mix-up. It was a royal misrepresentation. Then came the twist. Meghan's team dropped a bold statement, claiming Harry was independent and free and didn't need permission from anyone. That statement hit the palace like a lightning bolt. Royal advisors were furious. They said this was the very problem. In their eyes, Meghan had spent years convincing Harry that he was untouchable, that he didn't have to play by the same rules every Windsor before him did. But this wasn't freedom. It was rebellion behind palace walls. According to insiders, Charles finally snapped. In a closed-door meeting, the king reportedly said, "Meghan treats my son like a carrier bag of royal prestige. She will not use my family's name as her accessory." The room went ice cold. Aides sat in stunned silence. It was the harshest comment ever heard from Charles about his daughter-in-law. Then he said the line that changed everything. "Harry has allowed this, and so now the cost is his." Those words sealed Harry's fate. That was the exact moment Charles made his final call. To strip Harry of all remaining royal honours. Not out of spite, but to stop Meghan from using them as leverage. The monarchy had reached its breaking point. While the Sussex storm raged, one figure stood taller than ever: Prince William. The tabloids kept digging into his old battles with the press, but Charles shared a story that silenced even the harshest critics. Years ago, William had won a massive legal case against a newspaper, but instead of keeping the payout, he donated every single penny to charity, including the Invictus Games, Harry's own foundation. And Harry, he never thanked him. Not once. To the king, that said it all. One brother quietly served, while the other in his eyes tore himself apart for the world to watch. And in King Charles's eyes, Meghan had fueled Harry's downfall from the very start. On the evening of November 6th, when Charles III stepped out of his private chambers at Buckingham Palace, the air was electric. His top aides instantly knew what was about to happen. No soft talk, no family intervention, no "let's think this through." This time, the king wasn't speaking. He was acting. And his move would echo through royal history like thunder. What started as a scandal had officially escalated into what insiders called a constitutional emergency. Within hours, a secret crisis team was assembled, strategists, lawyers, and senior courtiers moving in silence. One insider described it as a surgical operation of symbolic exile. The stakes, nothing less than the survival of the firm itself. This wasn't just about punishing Harry and Meghan. It was about saving the monarchy's soul. That night, the king summoned only 3 men to his private study: Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker, the quiet enforcer of royal law; Sir Clive Alderton, Charles's iron-willed private secretary; and Simon Enfield, the communications mastermind once dubbed the Fixer during the Camilla years. The scene was tense. They didn't even sit down. The king looked at them and said sharply, "I want everything reviewed, all titles, all privileges, and I want it done before the weekend." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. This wasn't some symbolic gesture to calm headlines. It was the most radical shake-up of royal status since Edward VIII's abdication back in 1936. But this time, Charles wasn't retreating in shame. He was striking back in power. Sir Clive Alderton immediately took command, combing through every royal entitlement connected to Harry and Meghan. What could legally be stripped? What titles could be revoked? What privileges could be erased forever? The couple had already stepped back in 2020, but they still held on to powerful symbols: the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, and the lingering use of His and Her Royal Highness, even if not officially recognised. They also still laid claim to patronages tied to the crown, small details that carried massive weight in royal image-making. Now, under Charles's direct order, those details were about to be rewritten. For good. Even after stepping away, Harry and Meghan's global pull was still tied to the royal brand, and King Charles wanted that connection erased completely. No more confusion, no more blurred lines. This wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. "There must be zero ambiguity," Charles demanded. His goal wasn't to punish, it was to protect. Sir Clive Alderton made it clear to the crisis team, if they are not royal, they must not sound royal, act royal, or trade royal, period. The room went silent as royal documents were pulled from deep archives. Centuries-old cases were studied. Even the Queen's original letters patent were reopened for legal review. Within 2 days, a full and ruthless strategy took shape. The new order was absolute: strip Harry and Meghan of all rights to use the Sussex title for any commercial or charitable work. Remove every remaining trace of His and Her Royal Highness from internal court communications. Notify Commonwealth offices that Meghan Markle was no longer to be introduced or treated as royalty in any official capacity. And scrub both names from all Crown websites, programs, and sponsorships. Then came the final command: silence. No comment, no elaboration, no apology. It must look clean, said Simon Enfield, the palace's communications tactician, his tone sharp and cold. His mission was simple: control the story before Harry and Meghan could twist it. Enfield prepped 4 press response plans depending on how wild the fallout might get. Plan 1. Stay silent for 48 hours. Let the world talk while the palace stays dignified. Plan 2. Reaffirm crown values over personalities. Remind people the institution stands above individuals. Plan 3. Shift attention toward William. Spotlight his quiet composure, his sense of duty, his dignity under pressure. Plan 4. Release rare, touching archival photos of Charles with a young Harry. Paint the king not as a tyrant, but as a father who waited too long to act. But Charles had his own personal condition. "I want people to know," he said sternly, "this wasn't done out of hatred. It was done to save what we all serve." His words were calm, but behind them burned years of frustration. According to palace insiders, that calm didn't last long. In one private meeting, Charles reportedly dropped his most explosive remark yet. He described Meghan as the most destabilizing woman to enter the royal family in a generation. His aides were stunned. The fury behind those words was still alive, and this time there was no going back. "She is not my daughter-in-law, not anymore." Those chilling words, insiders say, mark the point of no return. And through all the chaos, one figure stayed calm, silent, and sharp behind the scenes. Prince William. He never spoke publicly against his brother, but sources confirm he fully supported the king's decision, without even a hint of hesitation. William had long believed the monarchy couldn't keep carrying the chaos surrounding Harry and Meghan. It was too heavy, too damaging. But privately, he made one heartfelt request: that no official statement include personal attacks on Harry. "Don't kick him when he's down," William reportedly told Simon Enfield. "Just close the door." His words showed the balance he was trying to keep. Loyal to the crown, but not cruel to his brother. 2 days later, William made his only public move. He appeared at a charity event in East London, smiling, composed, and dodging every press question thrown his way. It was subtle but powerful. The message was crystal clear. The monarchy moves forward. While royal strategists polished the language of the decree, others handled the fallout, quietly and ruthlessly. Harry's personal coat of arms was removed from internal ceremonial papers. Security teams reviewed every protocol tied to his possible UK visits. Meghan's name vanished from the digital registry of royal affiliations overnight. Even letters addressed to HRH, the Duchess of Sussex, were being returned, with firm corrections. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood turned tense and eerie. Staff described it as surgical, every detail handled with precision and no emotion. One longtime aide, who had served under 3 monarchs, whispered, "We've had scandals, we've had divorces, but this feels different. This feels like a permanent rewrite of the royal code." Then came the morning of November 10th. At exactly 6 a.m., King Charles rose early, reviewed the final document with Sir Clive Alderton, and signed the royal decree with a single, steady stroke of his pen. It was short, cold, and devastatingly final. With that signature, every remaining privilege tied to Harry and Meghan was officially revoked. 1 page, 1 signature, and centuries of royal tradition had just been rewritten. 2 names, just 2, vanished from the royal ledger overnight, and when King Charles's declaration hit global airwaves, it exploded like a royal detonation, controlled, precise, but absolutely earth-shaking. Within minutes, the world's headlines dropped all diplomacy and dove straight into shock. But the real firestorm didn't start inside Buckingham Palace. It erupted online. The digital battlefield lit up as Meghan Markle's fiercest defenders and harshest critics clashed in a global frenzy. What followed wasn't just another scandal. It was a total reboot of the royal story itself. Fame was colliding with monarchy, and the silence from the palace became the loudest sound of all. The first wave hit fast and hard. Hashtags flooded X, formerly Twitter, in all caps. Hashtag Meghan targeted. Hashtag Royal Reckoning. Hashtag Sussex stripped. Hashtag Charles goes nuclear. Across Hollywood, top influencers, activists, and Meghan's loyal supporters accused the palace of orchestrating a character assassination. Viral posts slammed the royal decision as outdated, even calling Charles's words a throwback to the monarchy of the 1950s. Many painted Meghan as a modern woman punished simply for refusing to obey royal convention. But across the UK and much of the Commonwealth, the tone was totally different. A YouGov flash poll taken the very next morning showed a staggering 78% of British respondents agreed that removing Harry's remaining royal honours was the right decision, and 66% said Meghan should have been included from the start. In Canada, Australia and Jamaica, the results were more divided, but most respondents said the Sussexes had caused brand confusion by acting royal while claiming independence. London tabloids, meanwhile, were merciless. Their front pages screamed with brutal simplicity. Daily Mail, Charles draws blood. The Sun, she was never one of us. The Telegraph, Queen Meghan, no more. The media-feeding frenzy stretched far beyond Britain. International outlets struggled to strike a balance between royal respect and global fascination. Le Monde in France described the move as a monarchy's desperate bid for survival. In the US, People magazine called it the final fracture of the modern royal fairy tale. And on social media, millions argued over one question that split the world in two. Was this justice or jealousy dressed in royal robes? The New York Times didn't hold back. It called the King's move a fatal fracture within Britain's first family. But across the Atlantic, People magazine hit even harder with its headline, Meghan betrayed, behind the palace curtain of revenge. Within mere hours of the announcement, the Archewell Foundation tried to keep things calm, issuing a short, two-line statement. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex remain committed to their humanitarian work. We will not respond to provocation. But insiders say the reality inside Meghan and Harry's Montecito mansion was far from calm. According to close sources, Meghan was furious, shocked, blindsided, and already rallying her top legal and PR teams. One insider told The Times that Meghan felt the palace had crossed a red line by implying she had exploited Harry. She's never been angrier, the source revealed. To her, this wasn't just a loss of titles. It was a public attack on her character, her identity, and her legacy. Behind closed doors, phones were buzzing non-stop. Calls reportedly went out to major crisis management firms in Los Angeles and New York. One Hollywood producer who'd worked with Meghan on her previous Netflix deal even hinted that a new project might be fast-tracked. This just gave her a new third act, the insider teased. But this backlash wasn't just personal, it was political too. Leaked reports suggested Meghan was weighing a possible defamation claim in the UK, arguing that Charles's phrase, a stain upon the dignity of the monarchy, crossed a legal boundary. However, legal experts were quick to point out how steep that hill would be to climb. Without clear proof that the King's statement contained specific falsehoods, such a claim would face enormous legal obstacles. Meanwhile, as Meghan moved into full attack mode, Harry went completely silent. No social media post, no interview, no statement, nothing. Those close to him said he looked frozen, emotionally drained and deeply humiliated. He's catatonic, one friend reportedly said, devastated. People who knew him best described how his expression during the King's televised address said everything. Eyes heavy, lips tight, shoulders stiff. There was no defiance left, only disbelief. In that silence, the public saw something raw. A prince who'd lost his titles, his role, and maybe even the bridge back home. One insider revealed that Harry had been warned this was coming, but he never truly believed his father would follow through. The real sting wasn't just the decision, it was the timing. Only days before the announcement, Harry had made a surprise appearance in Canada, completely unapproved by the palace. The move sent shockwaves through royal circles because at that very moment, Prince William was in Brazil, standing before world leaders, representing the monarchy in high-level climate talks. To palace insiders, Harry's sudden Canadian trip looked like a reckless stunt, what they privately called optics warfare. The theory? That Meghan had encouraged the move as a way to steal headlines from William's diplomatic success. And when palace officials questioned why there'd been no official clearance, Harry's reported reply stunned everyone. Why do I still need permission from people who don't protect me? When Charles heard those words, his reaction was cold and final. Because you still wear the name, I protect that, he reportedly said. And just like that, the royal illusion cracked. The borrowed shield of the monarchy that had long protected Harry was shattered for good. But the impact didn't stop in Britain. It rippled across the Commonwealth, testing loyalty in countries already drifting toward republicanism. Jamaica, Australia, and Canada all found themselves forced to react to the royal earthquake. In a surprising twist, Jamaican Prime Minister Portia Allen, previously outspoken about cutting ties with the Crown, actually praised King Charles's move. "This was a necessary step," she said. "Titles without responsibility do more harm than good." Down in Australia, however, the tone was explosive. Republican leaders pounced on the moment, calling the royal purge proof the monarchy is imploding. Senator Eliza Watts even tweeted, "What Charles stripped with his pen, we must remove with our vote." And in Canada, where Harry and Meghan briefly lived in 2020, the media split down the middle. CBC questioned the palace's judgment with the headline, "Sussex sanctioned, did the Crown just go too far?" But the Globe and Mail saw it differently, applauding the King's resolve. "For once, the monarchy did not blink." Still, whether praised or criticised, Charles's decision did something extraordinary. It reignited a global conversation about the Crown's future and what royal legitimacy even means in a modern world now watching every royal move in real time. It was a debate King Charles had hoped to avoid, but now it had erupted in full force. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood was tense, yet strangely calm. Official reactions were polite, but make no mistake, everyone had chosen a side. Princess Anne, ever the loyal enforcer of royal duty, reportedly stood by her brother without hesitation. Prince Edward called the decision a long time coming. But Queen Camilla? She urged caution. Sources say she warned that the palace risked looking vindictive if they went too far. She knew Meghan would turn this into a media war, one senior aide explained. But by that point, the king didn't care about optics anymore. Another staffer recalled what Charles murmured quietly after the broadcast. "She turned my son into a slogan. That's not family, that's branding." The words hung heavy in the air, grief wrapped in anger. When King Charles III signed the royal order officially stripping Harry and Meghan of their final privileges, it wasn't just a political act. It was the breaking point of years of bottled-up sorrow, frustration, and silence. This wasn't a cold maneuver from the throne. It was a father finally reaching the end of his patience. For decades, Charles had lived under the crushing weight of royal image and public expectation. But behind all the formal press releases and carefully crafted statements, something raw was building inside him. Disappointment. Not just in his son's choices, but in the man that son had become. Beneath the fury of the November decree lay memories the public rarely heard about. As a child, Harry had been Charles's wild spark, the one who could make him laugh when the palace felt more like a museum than a home. After Princess Diana's tragic death, Charles, though awkward with emotion, tried desperately to hold his sons together. He never quite knew how to show it, one longtime aide confessed. But he loved Harry deeply. He admired his fire, his charm, his ability to bring warmth into even the coldest royal room. Even into adulthood, Charles had quietly protected him, covering for missteps that once filled tabloids across the world. From the infamous Las Vegas photos to outbursts that embarrassed the firm, Charles had shielded his son again and again. But over time, even a king's patience runs out. And now, with one signature, Charles had drawn the final line between love and duty. For years, the palace's media team had bent over backward to protect Harry, spinning stories, blocking photos, and cleaning up chaos before it ever reached the headlines. Insiders say King Charles always believed deep down that his youngest son would one day return home, until Meghan entered the picture. Charles never said it out loud, but those closest to him knew his feelings. He viewed Meghan Markle with a mix of fascination and quiet suspicion. At first, she was dazzling. Her poise, her polished speeches, her Hollywood charm, she captivated both the public and the press. But behind palace doors, Charles reportedly gave his staff a warning. She plays the royal game, but she's playing her own version. What unsettled him wasn't her past or her heritage, it was her branding. One former press secretary said bluntly, "Every move Meghan made was media calibrated. She wasn't adapting to the crown, she was adapting the crown to herself." Over time, Charles began to believe Meghan had turned Harry into a kind of projection, her vision of modern royalty come to life. a walking, talking logo. What infuriated the king most was seeing Harry paraded through Hollywood parties as the prince who broke free, while still benefiting from the prestige of the very monarchy he publicly criticized. "He's not a man to her," Charles reportedly told aides in frustration. "He's a brand extension." The words, insiders say, summed up years of quiet heartbreak. Behind the scenes, Charles's inner circle began compiling a confidential dossier, evidence that would later justify his final decision. It included every moment that, in their view, showed Harry had crossed the line, stayed silent when loyalty was needed, or openly contradicted the royal family. At the top of that list, the Oprah Winfrey interview, where Harry failed to defend his father after Meghan implied the family had racist undertones. Then came the Netflix docu-series, which shocked palace staff by featuring private footage of royal grounds. Add to that the Archetypes podcast, where Meghan and Harry leaned heavily into their personal grievances, and the public speeches in which Harry openly criticised the monarchy's structural problems abroad. Each incident was another entry in what aides quietly called the Sussex File. And with every addition, the king's patience thinned, his silence hardened, and his belief that reconciliation was possible began to fade into something colder: finality. But in the end, it wasn't what Harry did that broke King Charles's heart. It was what he didn't do. He never said thank you, one royal courtier revealed. Not when Charles walked Meghan down the aisle, not when he shielded them from media attacks, not even when William quietly donated to Harry's own Invictus Games project. No acknowledgement, no gratitude, nothing. As the years passed, the rift between the brothers only grew wider and colder. Harry's voice became louder, angrier, more public, while William's grew quieter, more distant. Insiders say the elder brother made repeated efforts to reach out: private notes, quiet phone calls, even offers to meet without aides or press. But Meghan's team allegedly blocked it every time, insisting all communication go through official representatives. The human connection was gone, replaced by walls of publicists and lawyers. Then came the breaking point: Harry's memoir, Spare. In it, he laid bare their most personal arguments, even accusing William of physical aggression during one fight. The moment the book hit shelves, any lingering hope of reconciliation vanished. Charles was crushed, a palace insider said, not just by what Harry wrote, but by what it revealed: that his son saw his royal life not as a legacy, but as a wound. The king's heartbreak turned to disbelief when he learned of William's private donation to Invictus Games, a quiet gesture meant to support Harry's cause after winning a press settlement. William refused to publicize it. He didn't want credit. But when Harry failed to acknowledge it, even privately, Charles reportedly muttered in despair, "There is no honor left in him." Then came the Canada incident, the final spark that turned a family crisis into a constitutional storm. Harry's unapproved visit wasn't just a protocol misstep. It was, as one royal aide described, a provocation. Though he was still publicly known as the Duke of Sussex, Harry attended events where he was introduced using royal styling. He even posed for photos beneath banners implying royal patronage, sending the wrong message across international headlines. Local Canadian media ran bold titles like "Prince Harry returns to serve Commonwealth cause." But the truth? The palace had approved none of it. Behind the scenes, royal offices scrambled to contain the damage. Charles's Foreign Office liaison reportedly received 3 separate calls from diplomats in the region, all asking the same unnerving question: is Prince Harry still acting on behalf of the crown? That question, whispered across foreign offices and royal corridors alike, was the one that pushed King Charles to act, decisively and forever. That was the blunt question foreign diplomats demanded an answer to. And the palace had no choice but to respond with a humiliating no. The fallout from Harry's unapproved Canada trip was immediate and brutal. The very next day, King Charles reportedly told his closest aides, "I let him go. I didn't expect him to come back with a flag." It was his stinging reference to Harry appearing to represent the royal family abroad while simultaneously rejecting everything it stood for. A senior royal courtier later revealed that Charles felt mocked, misrepresented, and cornered. The betrayal wasn't just public, it was personal. He wasn't just hurt, he was furious. And when King Charles gets angry, he doesn't shout, he writes. That fury took form in ink and parchment, A historic declaration, a royal order that would strip Harry and Meghan of every last shred of royal recognition, title or privilege that could even hint at royal endorsement. By the time Charles's televised statement aired, he had already made peace with the fallout. There would be outrage. There would be silence from Harry. There would be endless speculation. But the king had accepted it all. He was no longer acting as a father, he was acting as the crown. That night, after signing the final order, Charles reportedly stood alone in the blue drawing room. He paused before the portrait of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and whispered, "Mummy, forgive me, but the boy you loved no longer walks with us." It was the quiet confession of a man torn between love and legacy. When King Charles III stripped Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of every remaining royal privilege, it wasn't just a family decision. It was a constitutional earthquake, a seismic act of institutional triage. For Charles, this was about more than punishment. It was a last-ditch attempt to preserve hierarchy, heritage, and national symbolism in an era where the very idea of monarchy is questioned daily. But if the king's goal was to bring clarity, what followed instead was chaos, an all-out recalibration of how monarchy itself is seen, structured, and used in the modern world. For years, royal analysts had whispered about Charles's long-term vision, a slimmed-down monarchy, smaller, more efficient, stripped of unnecessary titles and pageantry, focused entirely on duty. And now, that theory had become reality. The Sussex fallout wasn't just a scandal, it was the blueprint for a new royal order. Behind the grandeur, one truth stood out. The monarchy had been forced to evolve, not by choice, but by survival. And King Charles's bold, painful decision had drawn the line that would redefine royalty for a generation to come. Within mere days of the king's bombshell announcement, Buckingham Palace quietly rolled out a wave of reforms that shook even the oldest corners of the royal system. Behind closed doors, 3 decisive steps were taken: swift, strategic, and absolute. First, every secondary patronage held by minor royals was placed under review, evaluated for actual public impact, relevance, necessity. No more ceremonial handshakes for tradition's sake. Everything had to matter. Second, future sovereign grant funding was frozen for any royal without an active public role. The message was clear: no more rewards for inactivity. And third, a confidential audit of royal engagements was launched to gauge not only attendance numbers but public perception, media influence, and generational appeal. According to insiders, Charles issued new standing orders with razor-sharp precision: purpose over presence, relevance over tradition. It was more than policy, it was a warning to every Windsor still standing in the gilded halls: no one is untouchable. And from the void left by Harry and Meghan's dramatic exit, a new royal duo has risen: the Prince and Princess of Wales. William, once seen as the cautious heir, has evolved into the monarchy's quiet commander. Calm under pressure, strategic in tone, and resolute in his duties. Meanwhile, Catherine has become the monarchy's emotional heartbeat, a figure of grace and control, modern yet deeply dignified. She doesn't need headlines or sound bites. Her silence carries more weight than speeches ever could. Since the King's decree, William's public appearances have traded glamour for gravitas. Instead of glittering galas, he's leading youth mental health forums, visiting green innovation centres, and attending diplomatic receptions that radiate subtle strength. His Earthshot Prize, once seen as a personal project, is now treated as a royal flagship, a global statement of purpose tied directly to the Crown's evolving image. Catherine's own transformation has been just as striking. Her focus on early childhood development and mental health, once admired as compassionate causes, has now taken on a powerful new symbolism. The public, hungry for steadiness in a storm of royal upheaval, has embraced her as the anchor of the modern monarchy. One Times columnist captured it perfectly, calling her the monarchy's answer to First Lady diplomacy, poised, empathetic, and quietly commanding. In an era when every royal move is scrutinised, Catherine's restraint has become her weapon and William's steadiness his crown. Together they've become what the monarchy needed most, a reminder that dignity still has a pulse. Together, William and Catherine have become the recalibrated face of the monarchy, still rooted in tradition but now unmistakably mission-driven. Yet while King Charles's formal statement seemed to draw a line under the chaos, the real battle quickly shifted to a new front. the internet. And it's been brutal, unfiltered, and unstoppable. Social media turned into a digital courtroom overnight, with every platform acting as its own referendum on the monarchy's future. On TikTok, Gen Z creators posted fiery videos slamming Charles's speech as moral grandstanding from another era. On YouTube, conservative commentators hailed him as a hero. Finally, a king defending the crown. Meanwhile, on Instagram, influencer culture split in two. Some shared emotional tributes to Meghan and women silenced by power, while others flooded timelines with elegant tributes to Catherine, praising her poise, her grace, her silence. The hashtags told the story of a fractured public. Hashtag Team Catherine versus hashtag Justice for Meghan, hashtag Crown and Country versus hashtag Free the Sussexes. Royal news wasn't just trending, it had become tribal. Every image, every absence, every look exchanged at an event was dissected in real time. And that, insiders say, is the monarchy's greatest weakness in the digital age. Control is no longer theirs to command. Even as Charles reasserted royal authority with precision, the public reasserted its independence, with memes, opinions, and viral commentary reaching millions before Buckingham Palace could even respond. And though Harry and Meghan's names have been officially scrubbed from royal records, their shadow still lingers like smoke after a fire. Why? Because by removing them, Charles also cemented their place at the centre of the royal narrative. They may be gone from the roster, but not from the story. Now, every time Harry and Meghan appear, whether it's at a tech summit, a charity gala, or a Hollywood red carpet, the same question echoes across the world. Who are they now? Are they rogue royals chasing relevance? Private citizens trying to heal? Victims of palace cruelty, or architects of their own downfall? The truth is tangled, and that ambiguity has become the very thing King Charles hoped to erase. Instead of restoring clarity, his dramatic act has deepened the fog, leaving the monarchy caught between legacy and spectacle, between loyalty and scandal. And as royal watchers now whisper, the king's so-called act of purification might not be remembered for its order or discipline, but for its drama. Early polling in the UK suggested that King Charles's bold move had worked, at least for now. A post-announcement Ipsos survey showed that 63% of Britons supported the total severance of Harry's royal ties, and 71% backed the idea of stricter rules around royal branding. But the numbers also revealed a worrying divide. Only 41% of people under 30 said the monarchy still feels relevant to their lives. The message was clear. The purge may have strengthened tradition, but it hadn't rebuilt connection. Royal analysts called it the monarchy's short-term win, long-term risk. By acting decisively, Charles had proven the crown could still wield authority. But in doing so, he might have missed a once-in-a-generation chance to humanize the conflict. "It looked powerful, yes," said royal commentator Fiona Litchfield, "but it also looked like a father executing his son in front of the world." Her words hit like ice. What was meant to look regal instead felt raw, cold, even tragic. Internationally, the reaction was just as complicated. Across the Commonwealth, nations that have long debated independence were suddenly watching with sharpened eyes. In Jamaica, many saw Charles's purge as overdue discipline, but local headlines carried an uneasy question. If they exile their own, how will they treat us? In Australia, Republican voices seized the moment. The movement for independence gained momentum, calling the King's decree proof of a monarchy too rigid for a modern world. Senator Eliza Watts tweeted again, "If Charles can cut off blood, what hope do we have for democracy under the crown?" In Canada, columnists took a more measured tone, wondering whether the King's harsh words had permanently scarred the Windsor brand. Even among traditional monarchists, there was unease. What was meant to preserve the institution might have exposed its fragility instead. Yet through the uproar, one thing had become clear. Charles's vision for the monarchy is no longer about lineage alone. It's about responsibility. For him, survival depends not on royal blood, but on purpose, accountability, relevance, and reinvention. To achieve that, the crown will need more than ceremony. It needs transparency, soft power, and modern communication that resonates beyond palace walls. It needs an ethical code of service that can stand strong not just in front of Parliament, but in the court of TikTok. As one senior royal source put it bluntly, the crown has drawn its line, but the people will decide if it still matters. And now, in the strange quiet following the King's historic decree, the monarchy finds itself in suspension, a moment caught between restoration and reinvention. The roar of scandal has faded, but the silence that follows is heavier. It's the sound of an ancient institution staring into the mirror of the modern world, wondering whether it still recognizes the reflection staring back. The headlines are cooling down, the tabloids are moving on, and the royal calendar keeps marching forward. But beneath all that ceremony and composure, something far deeper is shifting. A quiet transformation that could redefine the monarchy for a generation. The institution isn't defending its past anymore. It's rebuilding its future. This is the post-Harry, post-Meghan monarchy, a new royal identity forged in the ashes of scandal. King Charles may still wear the crown, but the emotional heartbeat of the monarchy has clearly changed. In every official photo, every polished engagement, and every carefully crafted initiative, one truth stands out. Prince William and Princess Catherine have become the monarchy's soul. They are the calm after the chaos, the counterbalance to the Sussex storm. Together they represent the stability the crown desperately needs. William, once seen as cautious and reserved, has now stepped into a new role, not just as heir, but as the guardian of the Windsor brand. After years of restraint, he's emerged as the quiet gatekeeper of royal dignity. Catherine, meanwhile, with her flawless record of grace and composure, has become more than admired. She's indispensable. Her influence runs deeper than style or charity work. She represents continuity, empathy, and modern respectability all in one. Their challenge now isn't just to preserve tradition, it's to make it matter to a generation raised on YouTube clips, podcasts, and celebrity activism. As William and Catherine rise, Harry and Meghan exist in a strange limbo, too famous to disappear, too polarizing to reconcile. Their royal chapter is over, but their spotlight hasn't dimmed. Meghan is reportedly planning a massive media relaunch in 2026, a brand new venture designed to distance her from the royal narrative once and for all. But insiders say her team is already facing a tough question. Without the Duchess title, what does Meghan Markle truly represent? Harry's path looks no less uncertain. Some close friends claim he's considering returning to veteran advocacy, hoping to rebuild purpose outside the palace shadow. Others whisper about possible speaking tours, a second memoir, even a mental health-focused media project. Yet one undeniable truth remains. His identity as Prince Harry is no longer his to use. The crown reclaimed it. And for King Charles, often described as private, intellectual, and emotionally restrained, this final act will likely define his reign forever. By severing the ties of family in defense of the institution, he didn't just rewrite royal protocol. He revealed the cost of being a modern monarch. The age of sentiment has ended. What's left now is survival, and a monarchy trying to prove it still knows how to evolve under the weight of its own history. Was it too harsh, or exactly what was needed? That's the question echoing through the halls of power and across the internet alike. Historians will debate it for decades. Commentators will dissect every moment. But those close to the king say he has found a kind of quiet peace in the aftermath. He regrets the path that led here, one senior aide shared, but he does not regret the decision. Inside Buckingham Palace, the message is crystal clear. This was never about revenge. It was about preservation. Still, even amid the calm, the ghosts remain. For all the royal ceremony, power, and constitutional authority, there's one truth Charles can't escape. Public perception no longer belongs to the palace. It belongs to the people. A single tweet can unravel a royal speech. A podcast can rewrite centuries of legacy. One unedited photo can shift global opinion overnight. In a world where stories spread faster than statements, control is an illusion, and the monarchy knows it. The crown has survived everything from wars to abdications, assassination plots to scandal, divorces to disgrace. But now, it faces a challenge more elusive than any before, the blur between identity and brand, between family and fame. When King Charles stripped Harry and Meghan of their royal status, he didn't just make history, he asked a question no crown can answer alone. What does it truly mean to be royal in an age where the world is always watching, judging, and moving faster than tradition can keep up? For now, the monarchy endures, standing proud, polished, and poised. But its survival will depend on more than palaces or bloodlines. It will hinge on trust, relevance, and the fragile art of letting go. Because in the modern world, royalty isn't just inherited, it's performed, observed, and endlessly questioned. And as the cameras fade and the headlines cool, one truth remains. King Charles drew his line in history, but whether it defines his reign as strength or sorrow will depend on how the story is told next. So what do you think? Was the king's move justified, or did it cross the line between duty and destruction? Drop your thoughts below. Was it justice or heartbreak? Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment your take on this royal reckoning. The story of the monarchy isn't over, and your voice is part of what shapes what happens next.